The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor of the five-star restaurant, and every head turned toward the man standing frozen at the entrance. Arjun Mehta, the untouchable CEO of Mehta Industries, his face drained of color, his hand trembling as he stared across the candlelit room at a woman he thought he knew everything about until this very moment. For 3 years, Maya Thompson had been the invisible force behind his empire, the calm, composed, brilliant secretary who anticipated his every need, who worked 16-hour days without complaint, who had become so woven into the fabric of his life that he never questioned what her life looked like outside the glass walls of his corner office. But now, watching her throw her head back in laughter at something another man whispered in her ear, Arjun felt something crack open inside his chest, something he didn't have a name for, something that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. The story begins 6 hours earlier, in the steel and glass tower in downtown Mumbai, where Arjun ruled his business kingdom with precision and an iron will. He was a man who had built everything from nothing, the son of a small shopkeeper who had clawed his way through elite universities and ruthless boardrooms to become one of India's youngest billionaires. And he had done it by never letting emotions cloud his judgment, by keeping everyone at arm's length, by trusting no one except somehow, without ever meaning to. Maya, she had walked into his office 3 years ago for an interview. A young black woman with an economics degree from Oxford, flawless credentials, and a quiet strength that radiated from her like heat from a flame. She had been overqualified for a secretary position, and they both knew it. But she had her reasons for taking the job, reasons Arjun never asked about, because he had learned early that the less you knew about people's personal lives, the easier it was to make hard decisions. Maya worked at the desk just outside his office, a sleek modern space where she orchestrated his entire world with terrifying efficiency. She knew his coffee order changed based on how much sleep he'd gotten. She could read his moods from the way he held his shoulders. She rescheduled meetings before he even realized they conflicted with family obligations he would otherwise forget. And slowly, imperceptibly, she had become the one constant in his chaotic life. Arjun told himself their relationship was purely professional. She was an employee, he was her employer. And the generous salary he paid her was compensation for her extraordinary competence. But if anyone had been watching closely, they would have noticed the way his voice softened when he spoke to her, the way he always asked if she had eaten lunch, the way he gave her Christmas bonuses that exceeded her annual salary, the way his day felt fundamentally wrong on the rare occasions she called in sick. That Thursday started like any other. Arjun arrived at 6 a.m. to find Maya already at her desk, her natural hair pulled back in an elegant bun, her navy dress professional and perfect, her fingers flying across her keyboard as she compiled the briefing documents for his 8 a.m. meeting with investors from Singapore. "Good morning, Mr. Mehta," she said without looking up, and he grunted a response, swept into his office, and the day began its familiar rhythm. Calls, decisions worth millions of dollars, all flowing smoothly, because Maya had built the infrastructure of his days with such precision that he never had to think about anything except the work itself. But at 4 p.m., something unusual happened. Maya appeared in his doorway, and for the first time in 3 years, she looked nervous. "Mr. Mehta, I need to leave at 5 today," she said, her professional mask firmly in place, but something flickering in her dark eyes. "Is everything all right?" he asked, and he was surprised by the concern in his own voice. "Yes, everything's fine. I just have a personal appointment." He frowned, his mind immediately cataloging all the possible emergencies. Was she sick? Was her mother, who lived in London, unwell? But Maya offered nothing more, and he found himself unreasonably irritated by her privacy. "Fine," he said curtly, "but I need the Singapore contract revised by tomorrow morning." "It's already done," she replied calmly. "I sent it to your email an hour ago." Of course she had. At 4:58, Arjun looked up from his computer to see Maya gathering her things. But this time, she wasn't wearing her usual professional armor. She had changed into a dress he had never seen before, a deep emerald green that brought out the richness of her dark skin. Her hair was down in soft curls around her shoulders, and she had applied makeup that made her look not like his secretary but like someone he didn't know at all. Someone beautiful and separate from him, someone with a whole life he had never bothered to imagine. "You look," he started, then stopped, confused by his own reaction. "Thank you, Mr. Mehta," she said quickly, and she was gone, leaving behind a trace of perfume he didn't recognize and a strange hollow feeling in his chest. He tried to work for another hour, but his concentration was shattered. His mind kept circling back to Maya's transformed appearance, to the word appointment, which could mean anything, to the realization that he knew absolutely nothing about her personal life. Did she have friends? Hobbies, family here in Mumbai? And the not knowing felt suddenly unbearable. At 6:30, his mother called to remind him about a family dinner, and he found himself saying yes, even though he usually avoided these gatherings where his aunts paraded suitable Indian girls in front of him like cattle at market. The restaurant his mother had chosen was Le Jeu, an upscale French place in Bandra, and when Arjun arrived at 7:45, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit, he was prepared for the usual tedious evening of deflecting questions about marriage and grandchildren. But then he saw her. Maya was seated at a corner table by the window, the evening light turning her skin to burnished gold, and across from her was a man, tall, black, handsome, leaning forward with obvious interest, making her laugh in a way Arjun had never, in 3 years, managed to do. The wine glass he had just picked up from the greeting table slipped from his fingers and exploded against the floor, and suddenly the entire restaurant was staring at him, including Maya, whose eyes went wide with shock and something that might have been fear. "Arjun Beta, what happened?" His mother's voice cut through his paralysis, and he realized he was standing frozen, his hands clenched into fists, his heart pounding like he had just run a marathon. "Nothing, Ma," he managed, but his eyes were still locked on Maya, and he saw the exact moment she made a decision, the way her spine straightened, and she turned deliberately back to her date, dismissing him. The dinner that followed was torture. Arjun sat at his family's table, mechanically eating food he couldn't taste, nodding at conversations he didn't hear, while every cell in his body was attuned to Maya's table across the room. Who was this man? How did she know him? Why had she never mentioned him? And why? Why did the sight of his hand covering hers on the table make Arjun want to overturn his own table and storm across the restaurant like a madman? "You're not listening to anything I'm saying," his younger sister Priya observed, following his gaze. "Oh my God, are you staring at that couple? Do you know them?" "No," he lied automatically, but Priya was already looking more closely. "Wait, isn't that your secretary? Maya, right? I met her once when I came to your office. She's gorgeous." "Good for her. That guy is seriously handsome." Something dark and ugly twisted in Arjun's gut, and he suddenly understood what he was feeling, raw and irrational and completely inappropriate, given that Maya was his employee and he had absolutely no claim on her personal life. He excused himself from the table, muttering something about a work call, and escaped to the restaurant's outdoor terrace, where he stood gripping the railing and trying to remember how to breathe. "Mr. Mehta." Her voice came from behind him, soft and uncertain, and he spun around to find Maya standing in the terrace doorway, her clutch purse held against her stomach like a shield. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Family dinner," he said shortly. "What are you doing here?" "I'm on a date," she said, and her chin lifted slightly, defensively. Clearly he bit out, and then, because apparently he had lost all control over his own mouth, "Who is he?" Maya's eyes narrowed. "With all due respect, Mr. Mehta, that's none of your business." "You're my secretary, I'm your employee," she corrected, her voice sharp now, during business hours. "What I do with my personal time is my own affair." The word affair made him flinch. Does he know how hard you work? Does he know you skip lunch most days because you're too busy fixing my mistakes? Does he know you're brilliant enough to be running your own company instead of managing someone else's calendar? Maya stared at him, and something shifted in her expression, something that looked almost like pity. Why are you saying this? She asked quietly. I don't know. The words burst out of him, loud enough that a couple at a nearby table glanced over. He lowered his voice. I don't know, Maya. I saw you there with him and I couldn't. He stopped, the enormity of what he was about to confess crashing over him. Maya waited, her dark eyes searching his face, and in that moment, Arjun saw himself through her eyes, the demanding boss who had never once asked about her life, who had treated her like a remarkably efficient machine rather than a human being with hopes and dreams, and a heart that could be won by someone who actually paid attention. You couldn't what? She prompted gently. I couldn't breathe, he admitted, the words barely a whisper. For 3 years, you've been the first person I see every morning, and the last person I talk to every night. You know everything about me, my coffee order, my mother's birthday, my fears about the company, the fact that I can't sleep before big presentations, and I realized tonight that I know almost nothing about you, except that seeing you with someone else made me feel like I was losing something I never even knew I had. Tears shimmered in Maya's eyes, but her voice was steady. Do you know why I took this job, Mr. Mehta? I was supposed to start at Goldman Sachs in London. That was the plan. That was what my Oxford degree was for. But my younger brother got sick, really sick, and the treatment he needed was experimental and not covered by insurance. I needed money, fast, and your offer came at exactly the right time. You paid me 3 times what the position was worth. And I never understood why until later, when I realized you valued competence above everything else. I took the job thinking I'd stay for a year, save money, and leave. But then something changed. You changed. Or maybe I just started seeing you differently. You're difficult and demanding, and you absolutely drive me crazy. But you're also the most brilliant person I've ever worked with, and you care so much about doing things right, about taking care of your employees, about honoring your father's legacy. I watched you personally pay the hospital bills for a factory worker you'd never met. I watched you turn down a merger that would have made you millions because it would have meant layoffs. I watched you, and She stopped, pressing her lips together. You what? Arjun's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. I developed feelings, she said, each word seeming to cost her something. Completely inappropriate, completely unprofessional feelings for my boss. So I started trying to build a life outside of work, started accepting invitations from friends, started saying yes when men asked me out, started trying to be a normal person with a normal life instead of someone who lives and breathes for a man, who sees her as a particularly useful piece of office equipment. The words hit him like physical blows. Is that really what you think? That you're office equipment to me? What else am I supposed to think, Mr. Mehta? In 3 years, you've never asked about my family, my hobbies, my dreams, never asked anything that wasn't directly related to work. You know what my date asked me tonight, within the first 5 minutes. He asked, what makes me laugh? And I realized I couldn't remember the last time you'd seen me as a person rather than a function. Arjun felt something crumbling inside him. All the walls he had built to keep himself safe and focused and in control. You're right, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You're absolutely right. And I'm sorry, Maya. I'm so sorry. I told myself I was being professional, maintaining boundaries, but the truth is, I was being a coward. I kept you at a distance, because somewhere along the way, you became important to me not as an employee, but as a person, and that terrified me. Everyone I've ever let close has either left or disappointed me, and I couldn't bear the thought of that happening with you, so I just didn't let you get close. But you got close anyway. You're in my head all the time. Did you know that? When something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. When something goes wrong, yours is the voice I hear telling me it will be okay. And tonight, seeing you with someone who might actually deserve you, someone who asks what makes you laugh, instead of just barking orders at you, it broke something in me. They stood there on the terrace, the sounds of the city humming below them, the light from the restaurant spilling across Maya's face, and Arjun saw her expression soften. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying that I don't want to be your boss anymore. Rather, I don't want to just be your boss. I want to know everything about you. I want to know what makes you laugh, and what keeps you up at night, and what you dream about when you let yourself dream. I want to ask about your family, and meet your brother, who I paid for treatment without ever asking his name. I want to take you to dinner and ask you questions, and listen to your answers, and be someone in your life who sees you, really sees you. But I also understand that I've wasted 3 years being an idiot. And if you found someone who treats you the way you deserve to be treated, then I have no right to interfere. So I'm not asking you to choose me, Maya. I'm just asking you to know that you were never, not for one single day, just office equipment to me. You were always so much more." Maya was crying now, tears streaming down her beautiful face, and she laughed that same free, joyful laugh he had heard across the restaurant, but this time it was for him. "His name is Marcus," she said. "He's a friend of my brother's, and this was our first date. He's nice, and he's handsome, and he asked all the right questions, and I spent the entire evening wishing he was you." Arjun's breath caught. "Maya, let me finish," she said. "I can't keep working as your secretary, not like this, not with these feelings. It's not fair to either of us. But if you're serious about wanting to know me as a person, if you're serious about seeing where this goes, then I need you to be brave. Mr. Meta Arjun, I need you to be as brave in your personal life as you are in business. I need you to introduce me to your mother, not as your secretary but as someone important to you. I need you to not care that I'm black, and you're Indian, and your family probably has very different expectations. I need you to choose me deliberately, publicly, with your whole heart, or not at all. Can you do that?" Arjun looked at this extraordinary woman who had been right beside him for 3 years, who he had been too blind and too scared to really see, and he felt everything shift into focus. "My mother is sitting at table 12, he said, "and she has been pestering me about marriage for 5 years. Would you like to go shock her by sitting down at our table and letting me introduce you as the woman I've been in love with without realizing it?" Maya's smile could have powered the entire city. "I would like that very much," she said. "But first, I need to go explain to Marcus that this isn't going to work out." "I'll come with you," Arjun said, offering his arm, and together they walked back into the restaurant not as boss and secretary, but as two people taking the first terrifying, exhilarating step into something real. The conversation with Marcus was brief and gracious. He was a good man, and he could clearly see what was happening between Maya and Arjun, and he wished them well with genuine warmth. Then Maya and Arjun walked across the restaurant to table 12, where his mother and sister and assorted relatives were watching with undisguised curiosity. And Arjun said, clearly and firmly, "Ma, everyone, I'd like you to meet Maya Thompson. She has been my secretary for 3 years. But more importantly, she is the kindest, most brilliant, most remarkable woman I have ever met. And if she'll have me, I would like her to become much more than that." The table went silent, his mother's eyes wide with shock, but then Priya started clapping and laughing, and his mother, after a long moment of studying Maya's face, smiled slowly and said, "Well, it's about time you found someone who could keep up with you. Sit down, beta, both of you, and tell me everything." And they did. Over the course of that long dinner, Arjun learned that Maya loved old movies and spicy food, that she played piano, that her brother was now healthy and studying engineering, that she had been terrified on her first day of work, that her favorite color was the exact shade of green she was wearing, that she dreamed of starting a non-profit to help families afford medical treatment, He learned 1,000 small things that made her who she was, and with each revelation, he fell more completely in love with her. And Maya learned that Arjun's gruffness hid a deep well of insecurity, that he had never felt good enough, despite all his success, that he visited his father's grave every Sunday, that he was secretly sentimental and kept every thank you note his employees had ever written him, that underneath the demanding boss was a man desperate to be seen and accepted for who he really was. 6 months later, Maya left her position as Arjun's secretary and took on a new role as Director of Corporate Social Responsibility at Meta Industries, where she built the foundation she had dreamed of, and Arjun learned to leave work at work and come home to a relationship built on true partnership, mutual respect, and the kind of love that grows when two people choose to really see each other. On the day Arjun proposed, he took Maya back to that same restaurant, to that same terrace, and he got down on one knee and said, "You asked me once who I was beyond my title and my company, and I didn't have an answer. But now, I know. I'm the man who gets to love you, if you'll let me. I'm the man who wants to spend the rest of his life making you laugh and asking you questions and being brave enough to deserve you. Maya Thompson, will you marry me?" And she said yes, because sometimes the person you've been looking for has been right in front of you all along, waiting for you to be brave enough to really see them. The wedding was a beautiful fusion of Indian and Western traditions, of his culture and hers. And when Arjun's mother welcomed Maya into the family with traditional ceremonies and genuine tears of joy, when Maya's family flew in from around the world to celebrate, when two communities came together to witness to people choosing love over fear, it felt like more than a wedding. It felt like proof that the walls we build around our hearts are never as strong as the connections we make when we let them down.